The sharp, familiar metallic flavor of blood filled Conan's nose, an almost welcome reprieve from the stench of the sulfur mines. If only it weren't coming from Iselin. The older man gasped in erratic spurts, his stout chest heaving with effort, but Conan could hear the gurgle of blood in the lungs. Like everyone in Tahai Mines eventually did, Iselin was dying, his life wasting into the sand in a bright red pool. Conan knelt beside him, silent, every part of him feeling numb. Iselin's eyes rolled up toward the cold sky as he wrenched another breath in, his sun-worn skin stretched into a grimace on his gaunt cheeks. His crow's feet, etched on by years of kind smiles despite the misery of the mine, creased with pain. A tremor took over his lower lip as he tried to speak. "Son." The word bubbled out, and Iselin hacked a bloody cough. The spray hit Conan's face, but he didn't flinch, just stared down with a furrowed brow. Could the five-faced god be this cruel? He made several quick hand motions, although Iselin's eyes were already losing their focus. "Don't leave me," he signed. "Please don't leave me." His vision blurred for a moment, but he blinked it away for fear of losing awareness of his surroundings. He glanced up to be sure the other prisoners had gone, then placed a protective hand on his mentor's laboring chest. They were alone. The men who'd attacked Iselin had taken the rations and disappeared into the endless rows of wooden shanties. Conan returned his gaze to Iselin, who was trying to speak again. "Endure it," he managed. "Overcome." The complex words took too much effort. The frothy red spittle leaked from the corner of his mouth, and he shuddered once more under Conan's broad palm. The stiffness pulling at his face softened. The tension of a decade protecting Conan in Tahai Mines eased from his brow, and the tremble in his lip stopped. The constant gurgling died away, and Iselin's head lolled to one side, his bright eyes vacant of their typical hard glint. Conan had always likened them to diamonds, clear and impossibly hard. Iselin was exactly like that, a man forged of iron will and strength, a leader and a mentor. A savior. Iselin was the only reason Conan had survived the mines as a boy. In truth, the man was the only reason he lived now. What purpose had life to offer Conan, bereft of the only person who cared for him? What was the point of waking, working, breaking one's back, and growing weak with thirst, all for the glory of Tahai Mines and its masters, the merchants of Shayal? Something in him transformed, condensing any boyish, nonsensical hope of escape into a tight ball, then crushing it into a blackened, toxic pit. The pit burrowed through his heart, digging deep into the layers of guarded emotion, and seated itself. Conan brushed a bloody hand over Iselin's face, pushing the eyelids shut. The tradition left sandy fingerprints everywhere, and Conan heaved a resigned sigh, taking the cold, dry air in through his nose and out through his mouth. It burned his nostrils. His other hand still lay on Iselin's chest. Beneath his palm, the man's heart no longer beat. His lungs no longer labored. Behind the third rib on the right side, several small puncture wounds leaked the last of his congealing fluids, feeding the desert sands their rich life. Conan could taste the metal hanging in the air, and it reminded him to wipe the blood spray from his lips and cheek with a tattered sleeve. He glanced around again, hovering protectively over the corpse, narrowing his eyes in suspicion. A few other prisoners watched, their impassive gazes no more or less than he'd expect. Death was no surprise in the mines, merely an eventuality. Sometimes it was accompanied by the opportunity for new boots. Other than the man with the dagger, no one would challenge Conan today. They had seen him fight. They had seen him rage against 3 or even 4 men with practiced jabs and hard knuckles and bodily tosses. Despite his less than 20 years, his natural height and brawn gave most prisoners pause. Combined with the massacre of pockmarked skin covering the left half of his body, his hulking presence was usually avoided, as he preferred. Every fight avoided was a battle won in the name of survival. Iselin had taught him that. But if you had to fight, show no mercy. Weakness, hesitation, and uncertainty could kill. Iselin had taught him that too. That unfamiliar sensation of blurred vision returned, and Conan winced, willing it away with tightly squeezed eyes and a hardened resolve. He could feel the movement stretch the taut skin of his left eyebrow. His cheek ticked, an erratic and constant twitch that revealed his inner turmoil, and then he realized how sore his jaw felt. He was clamping his teeth together so hard, an ache was emerging in his temple as well. With another slow, deep breath of the winter air, that bitter chill that sucked warmth from the body and teased with skies as bright and clear as ice, Conan began to remove Iselin's boots and clothes. The Tahai Desert was miserable in winter, when the straight-line winds screeched down from the northern wastes and tore across the sands until they broke against the bleeding wall. Beyond that massive cliff of blood-streaked malagate and shale and slate, the raised steppe of Shayal's dry kingdom truly began, the edge of civilization. Tahai mines had no guard wall, no sealed stone buildings, no hearth fires, only an endless sea of leaking shanties with dilapidated roofs and empty sacks and rotting barrels. And the mines. The small fortress guarding the mines featured towers facing the prison camp, spaced regularly to ensure each section of the camp was monitored just enough to ensure consistent operation. Conan had been inside the fortress once, according to Iselin, when he arrived as a boy, unconscious and horribly maimed. And since he had been here, in the camp, surviving from day to day on rations exchanged for mined sulfur and salt and occasional gemstones. He fastened Iselin's boots onto his feet. They were tight. He'd have to cut the toes out. The pants and shirt would be used as cloth to augment his existing clothing, though neither would fit. Conan stood, looking at the dead man one last time. Iselin was gone. His intelligent, glinting eyes and good soul were gone, passed through the gates to the next life. This was merely an empty, naked husk. Conan slung it over his shoulder, his own expression frozen with neutrality, and headed to the waste pits. He was alone.